Unspoken energetics of celibacy beyond morality, a sacred look into the hidden vibrational shifts of a silent body and the power of undivided prana. Opening transmission. There is a kind of silence that does not come from lack of speech, but from the refusal to waste energy into fragmentation. There is a kind of celibacy that is not moral, not religious, not a rule at all. It is simply the body's return to its own orbit, its own still sun. This celibacy is not imposed. It is discovered, and once discovered, something begins to glow beneath the skin. Something begins to settle beneath the breath. Something begins to awaken that no book, no vow, and no moral sermon could ever cause. Today we enter the unspoken energetics of celibacy, not as a doctrine but as a luminous state of undivided power, a return to stillness, not from suppression but from sacred inner sufficiency. Let us begin. 1. What celibacy truly means. Celibacy, in its most misunderstood form, is often framed through shame, morality, or suppression. But in its highest form, it is simply this: the containment of sacred energy. Celibacy is not the absence of sexuality. It is the refinement of life force. It is the art of stillness that allows the current of vitality to stop seeking outward dispersal and begin spiraling inward, into deeper silence, into higher frequency, into the source of perception itself. This is why in ancient traditions, those who practiced celibacy were not merely avoiding acts of intimacy, they were cultivating luminosity, cultivating the vertical channel, cultivating a field of uninterrupted charge. Celibacy was never about punishment, it was about preservation, not the fear of temptation, but the joy of inner union. Why energy is lost in ordinary desire. Every act of desire, when it seeks fulfillment outside the self, leaks subtle force. Each time the mind reaches outward for pleasure, for affirmation, for touch without stillness, there is a break in the internal current. And just as a stream that splits loses momentum, so too does the subtle body lose coherence when constantly reaching outward. This is why the ancient seers said, "It is not the act that depletes, but the unending direction of energy away from the center." Ordinary desire is centrifugal, always spinning outward. But sacred celibacy reverses the direction. It becomes centripetal, drawing everything towards stillness. When the body stops leaking through craving, when the mind stops escaping into fantasy, a reservoir begins to form inside. And from that reservoir, the light begins to rise. 3. The rise of inner radiance. What truly changes in a person who enters deep celibacy, beyond effort, beyond rule, is not just behavior, but frequency. A softness arrives in their movements. A brightness gathers around the face. The voice grows quieter, yet fuller. The eyes begin to glow, not with fire, but with presence. Why? Because energy that is no longer dispersing into unconscious reaction begins to saturate the cells with life. The body becomes a lamp, charged by its own inner flame. In the ancient texts, it was said that those who preserved their vital essence over time would eventually feel a rising warmth at the base of the spine, a golden silence in the heart, a subtle ringing in the head like a temple bell without sound. These are not fantasies. These are energetics, signs that life force is no longer being spent in the lower circuitry, but being lifted towards stillness, clarity, and vision. 4. Celibacy without morality, the sacred middle path. When celibacy is practiced as a morality, something one should do, it often becomes brittle. It may last a while, but eventually it breaks, either into pride, or into repression, or into relapse. But when celibacy arises not from fear or force, but from a genuine inward pull, then it becomes natural, effortless, joyful, silent. This kind of celibacy doesn't need vows, it doesn't need rules, it only needs honesty, an honesty so deep that one can say, "What I am seeking outwardly is already stirring within me." And in that moment, the entire inner climate shifts. The body stops demanding pleasure, the mind stops chasing distraction, and the soul becomes enough unto itself. This is the celibacy that no scripture can fully explain, because it arises beyond the mind and moves from a place deeper than discipline. It is not about what you don't do, it is about what you no longer need to do, because something more beautiful is already happening inside the silence. 5. The subtle body in celibacy, channels and light currents. In the body, there are not just blood vessels and nerves. There are channels of light, of vibration, of memory. These channels carry not just sensation, but intention, emotion, karmic echo, and ancestral tone. Every time we act out of compulsion, especially sexual compulsion, these channels become tangled, heavy, blocked. But when the sexual impulse is not acted upon, and instead held with softness and presence, the charge begins to rise. The ancient maps called this the reversal of flow. What normally descends and disperses begins to ascend and refine. And when this happens, the following shifts begin to occur. The breath becomes deeper, even in stillness. The spine begins to feel like a subtle pillar of vibration. The heart begins to glow with warmth that does not come from emotion. The mind becomes clearer not from thinking, but from being. The body starts to feel like a temple, not a tool. This is not metaphor. This is energetic reality. 6. The union that replaces the search. In celibacy, not the moral version, but the luminous one. What arises is not dryness, but union. A union not with another body, but with the field of consciousness itself. One begins to feel held by existence, fed by silence, touched from within by a presence that needs no name. This is why so many mystics, across all traditions, spoke of celibacy not as sacrifice, but as the way to become bride and bridegroom in one body. Inwardly, a marriage occurs, between will and surrender, between fire and space, between form and formlessness. And in this inner union, a joy arises that has nothing to do with climax, but everything to do with completion. 7. Dangers of forced celibacy and the return to naturalness. But let us not romanticize it. Celibacy, when forced, especially without understanding energy, can become a prison. It can lead to repression and guilt, energetic congestion, psychological fragmentation, even spiritual delusion. This is why celibacy must never be a rule imposed by doctrine. It must be a discovery made by the body, a yes that arises from the bones. If the body is not ready, there is no shame in union, no harm in love. But when the body is ready, when the current begins to rise without outer stimulation, when the joy of solitude outweighs the hunger of grasping, then celibacy becomes not only possible, but beautiful. And it is in this beauty that the soul truly begins to shine. 8. Final integration. What celibacy frees in you. Celibacy, true celibacy, frees more than just energy. It frees the identity, because so much of our self-image is built around our relational dynamics, our attractiveness, our desirability, our emotional wounds. When these layers fall silent, something begins to appear that is far more simple. You, without distortion. You without the performance. You, not as a gender or a role or a longing, but as a pure field of being. This is the secret gift of celibacy, not the avoidance of pleasure, but the revelation of what you are when nothing is reaching outward and everything is resting inward. Not everyone will walk this path. Not everyone needs to. But for those who feel the call, not from judgment, but from joy, not from fear, but from fullness, then may this remembrance guide you into the heart of stillness, where energy is no longer divided and the soul becomes whole, mystical reflection. What you are seeking in another is often waiting in your own stillness. The more quiet your body becomes, the more clearly you can feel the original current. Celibacy is not a punishment. It is a return to the undivided, to the luminous, to the source. Let this truth stay with you as we now turn toward the next sacred inquiry. If this transmission stirred something in your silence, if it reminded you of the power within restraint, or the beauty of gathering your life force back into stillness, then I invite you to support this sacred work. Subscribe to this channel, or become a member to help expand this library of transmissions for sincere seekers across the world. Your presence here, your listening, is already part of the unfolding. But if you feel moved to give energy back to what nourishes you, this is the way. Let the silence continue to speak. Let the inner current remain whole. And let the light of this ancient remembrance ripple through your breath. Until next time, may your stillness shine quietly. Next transmission preview: how eating in silence changes the subtle body. A look into how the way we take in food affects the way we take in life. Coming soon.